that at the time, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I didn't feel like a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, I must have been a superstar.
Yeah.
And I made what I did with other people fun and effective.
Nice.
In that order.
Yes.
And it wasn't a plan, and it wasn't something I was mentored to do or trained to do.
Right.
It was just a gift, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, your mother was even more superstar.
More talented than you.
Yeah.
We know that. She was smarter than you. It's acknowledged.
But we had this kind of unique parallel lives, parallel impacts on the culture here.
Mm-hmm.
She was elected president of the students, the married student housing, Escondido Village. It's like being the mayor of a
United Nations.
town of 7,000 people from
Switzerland.
112 countries. And
Thailand,
because I was
Peru.
the enrolled graduate student, I was co-president.
Okay.
But I was the arm candy. She
You lucky man.
Exactly. So I got to cut the ribbons and things, but
Look sharp in a uniform.
Exactly. Show up, show your ID card.
Sweet.
But one of her many accomplishments was to have I guess you'd call it a student center or a facility built that, and she met a woman whose name I don't remember now, but became a friend who happened to be an expert on early childhood, nursery school stuff.
Mm-hmm. Stanfordville.
Her name wasn't Montessori, but she was younger than us, and but she was ready to do this.
Wow.
So we insisted that this community center, that's what it was called, include a nursery school. And that she would be the teacher and the designer
Oh my gosh.
of the
What
building.
An incredible opportunity.
So your mother and this nursery school teacher designed the building
Created it out of a shell of
so that it would
Yeah.
meet the actual needs of the people who lived there, who had
Incredible.
little kids,
Wow.
and no money except what they got from Saudi Arabia or other places. And
Home country.
and so she got that built in the 4 or 5 years that we lived there.
In Escondido Village.
Yeah. Also,
Not that nothing else was going on at that time.
exactly. Anyway, and
Wow.
then she was on the board of the first HMO, the first consumer-owned health maintenance organization in the world.
Right.
So she helped design and plan that as a nurse and as a
Astonishing. Yeah.
smart person.
Wow. She was on the board.
Yeah, the founding board. Before it existed, they had to design it.
They made it happen.
And they presented it they wanted it to be housed or run by the medical school. But the dean of medicine turned them down because he didn't want consumer-controlled, member-controlled medicine.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted doctor-controlled medicine.
He was against it.
But the leader of the pack was Dr. Hal Holman.
Mm.
Is that the name? That's the movie star's name, but I think his name was Holman.
Turns out y'all were.
So he decided, well, he was going to go rogue, and instead of trying to sell this to the medical school, he started up as a nonprofit in Palo Alto, and that's what they did. Became the Mid-Peninsula Health Organization. And it still exists today, and is much bigger and more
Incredible.
capable than it was. But
I remember learning that before Mom's funeral and just being flabbergasted. And I was like, I had to confirm it. I Googled it up. I looked at, I still have a tab open on Mid-Peninsula.
yeah,
The Mid-Peninsula is the peninsula of San Francisco. Like, wow, that's cool.
we're right in the middle.
And yeah, so that is what an accomplishment in the context of
Yeah.
Graduate student trying to get his degree,
Mm-hmm.
trying to put a PhD together in a research project, and the fifth child being born, and discoveries about the third, and setbacks and advances, and it's just so many balls in the air that it was it's astonishing. When you look back on it, I'm sure it was day to day, like you say. And it was the same way, I think it's the same way with a lot of families juggling a lot of balls. But the fact that all that just kind of came off, and then tell me about how you decided to buy a house, and then another one. How does that happen?
That was amazing. This was all your mother.
Okay, okay.
So we were living in student housing for 72 through 75. So this was probably 74.
Mm-hmm.
She said, if we're ever going to be able to buy a house after we leave here, we're going to have to buy a house while we're here.
Mm-hmm.
And at the rate that real estate values are increasing,
We better buy it now.
we'll have enough. Yeah, we'll buy it now, but we'll have enough profit to be able to buy a bigger house wherever we wind up.
Yeah.
So I said, well, try me.
Make it so.
Same words I used when she bought the Arizona house.
Try.
So she found a house, the least expensive house in Palo Alto, $48,000 at the time. It still
That's a
stands.
lot,
We visited it. But we had enough for a down payment.
What was the address? Do you remember?
Pardon?
Do you remember the address?
Yes, it was 851 East Meadow Drive.
That is a deep memory. East Meadow is one of the earliest compound words I ever remember hearing.
And it was right across the street from an elementary school.
Ortega.
Literally, yeah.
Ortega.
Which is not there anymore. It's a park.
It's a park, yeah. I was here.
Trent and I went there
Does it have a toad
last
hole?
Saturday. She found that the toad hole had been paneled. She still found
The sprinkler
where the
covers.
underground watering system was, but it had been,
Upgraded.
yeah. Gentrified.
That tends to happen in this neck of the woods, right?
Gentrified
Over
toad hole.
time. That ramshackle adobe starts to look pretty nice.
Exactly.
The toad hole got an upgrade. That's nice.
So anyway, we bought the house, and it was tight. It was small.
Sure.
It's probably the smallest habitable house in Palo Alto, but it was just right for young kids who didn't mind being bundled together. And
Yeah, bunk beds were fun
yeah,
back then.
Heck.
Yeah.
and
Fun.
and we were only there for over a year, but the price went up by $10,000 or something, which
Nice.
was a lot.
Touchdown.
So
So then, Mountain View. You weren't done yet.
well, Mountain View was our very first home when
Oh.
I was still in the Navy.
Oh.
We moved out here in December of '68.
This
month
happened
after
before I was
Trinrose was-
born, so this
yeah.
is always a little bit
Yeah.
foggy for me.
So Trinrose was born early on at the end, 26th of November,
We've been telling that story.
1968.
lately. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
While we were supposed to be en route to California.
So she was 8 months pregnant and was like, "We better get there soon." And then
Yeah.
so
And then the
Chrissy
story
went
about
fishing.
the story about the pond. Yeah.
Grandma's pond.
So anyway, but at the time I was in the Navy, and when you get orders to report by a certain date, you do it.
Yeah.
So I flew out to San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
and down to Palo Alto. I didn't have a car.
Borrowed someone's Triumph, probably.
Bill. No, I don't know how that worked out, but it worked out.
Found a way.
I was staying with
Charmed life.
Hannah and Jonathan Cranch, who were members of the Palo Alto Circle, it was called at the time,
Yeah.
of the church.
Right.
And they must have taken care of me, but I wound up contacting, on somebody's recommendation, a realtor, Elta Gray was her name, and she took, heard what we could afford and took us around and so forth, and found this Eichler house. Eichler was a big developer at the time of 3-bedroom,
Bungalows.
mostly glass houses. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a name.
lot of glass.
That is a name.
he was a famous
Resident.
developer and designer,
Yeah.
sort of the I.M. Levitt of
Levittown.
California.
Yeah, I see.
Eichler was the Bay Area version of
It's
Levitt.
probably happening at the same time too. Being built.
And so she found 222 Hamilton Avenue,
Okay.
which we also visited Saturday.
Yes.
Still there.
Cool.
It's been shined up a little bit, but
The number attached to it, I'm sure, is got pretty shiny too.
the 222 is looking good.
No, I mean the one
Oh.
before all the zeros, the
Yeah.
millions.
Right. Well, now then I paid $17,500 for a 3-bedroom house in
Wow, that
Mountain
sounds
View.
like a lot. Sounds like a down payment.
I know, it does.
Or a year of college
I know.
these days.
A semester for some.
A semester.
And then, so we lived there for 2.5 years.
Okay. That's
and
right.
and I was still in the Navy. I taught at Stanford. I got a master's degree in Ed Psych, and actually was admitted to the doctoral program because
Is that when you taught celestial navigation?
yeah, taught
Okay,
celestial
gotcha.
navigation for the Navy
Yeah.
on campus, and we weathered the bombing of Cambodia and the reaction to that on campuses all over the country,
Right.
including ours, and students striking and breaking windows and doing worse things at Berkeley. So I was glad I was at Stanford. And that's how I got into educational psychology.
Yeah.
Was meeting Dick Snow, who turned out to be my advisor. And you don't just walk on at Stanford. Not everybody who walks on is admitted to anything, but that's another example of how I must have been.
You were invited in.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
took you under his wing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And it turned out that he was an undergraduate at University of Virginia, and he was in the Navy ROTC.
Well, what's a happy
But he was
coincidence? Yeah.
required to leave because his eyesight went bad.
Hmm.
So he always regretted that. So kind of
you fulfilled something for him too.
I did. I was his dream come true, so to speak.
Nice.
And it turned out.
And he was into Ed Psych.
Yeah.
And he's like, check this out.
Yeah.
We need some experiments done.
Yeah. Well,
Think of some experiments.
we're doing research on teaching, and
Uh-huh.
but the first couple of years, which was basically what I did, was just course taking, because
Sure.
I was already employed by the Navy. I couldn't be a research assistant
I see.
on a project or anything.
And you have to take classes at some point, Dad. You can't just be at the front of the room the whole time.
I know.
Sometimes teaching is learning.
I know. I know. It's
Slow
true.
down, big
It's
fella.
true. So it was, but I had a great relationship with Dick Snow.
Sure.
And the instructors of the courses, the professors, were impressed that I would come to class in uniform,
Sure.
and that was gutsy from their point of view. That's a crow chasing a hawk.
Yeah, we've seen a few of those. They do not get along in this state or in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So I left with I was on the university senate too. I was the representative of my department. The
So you were kind of counterculture, at least appearing or passing as.
Yeah.
Because you had the bona fides, but you also had Mom, who was rounding off those lieutenant commander rough edges maybe,
Yeah.
or overly formal approach. Plus, her brother Frank and Shag gave you a look into what Haight-Ashbury lifestyle really was, because we wanted to go play with our cousins Owen and Noah, and
That's right.
Abby wasn't born yet, but he
right.
was.
Up to Golden Gate Park.
That's right. That's another story, but just part of the context.
Yeah.
So Dick Snow, can I tell you one memory I have of Dick Snow? I remember him being a giant of a man. He was basically Grizzly Adams to me. He had a big shaggy beard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him taking us. I have a memory that he lived in Berkeley Hills or Oakland Hills. That may be maybe confusing two events. One being us playing in the back of his house, which had a pool, and I was stung by a yellow jacket for the first time in my life, and it was like the world was coming apart. And I was immediately surrounded by strong, attentive adults, and we got through it. It was great. But it was first like personal trauma I can remember.
Yeah. Wow.
It lived right inside. And then the other memory that it's fused with is a 4th of July when we were on a hill and we could see about 15 or 20 different fireworks shows going on in San Francisco, San Luis, I know the names now, Alameda, Oakland, and Berkeley. Just I could see them popping. Oh, there's somebody in the bay.
Yeah.
And then the noises would just come rolling in.
Yeah, later.
You couldn't even tell which ones they were coming from.
Yeah.
Because there were so many of these different shows.
Yeah.
So that's my memory of Dick Snow.
Those are good
Or
ones.
memories.
Yeah. His house with the pool was at Stanford on the campus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it had the feeling of this place, you know. It felt like Berkeley feels.
Felt like halfway up a hill somewhere,
Yeah.
a big privacy fence and luxurious. I don't know if the kids were allowed inside or not. All of my memories are from the pool deck.
Yeah. Anyway, he was a good guy.
Yeah.
He died young of pancreatic cancer.
Oh, is that a fact?
Like 63 or something.
That's what Mom died of.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Anyway, he was a smoker and a drinker. I mean,
Did he
not
smoke with his
related
pancreas?
to. Pardon?
Did he smoke with his pancreas? That's weird.
No, I think, but his.
It was the 70s is the proper answer to that. I don't mean to make
But he
light.
looked cool.
Yeah, he
He
did.
looked cool with a scotch and a cigarette, and the beard.
That's right. He had a very kind of Warren Beatty vibe with a big, with the big beard.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a picture of him if we can find one.
Yeah.
I have him. He's one of those adults that was like the first one of those kinds of adults that you base a category on for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Shag was another one, and Frank and
Archetype.
Bronley and Alice and Avis and Maria,
Yeah.
who was our au pair. in the thick of it.
That's an interesting story. Do you know how she came to be?
Tell me.
Well, she was brought to Stanford by a couple. The guy was a graduate student.
They're engaged or just a hanger on, like from Peru, is that right?
No, Brazil.
Brazil.
Belo Horizonte, Brazil, which is up the coast from Rio.
Okay.
It's a big center for gem mining.
Interesting.
Belo Horizonte. Anyway, she was brought as the au pair for their baby,
Okay.
and they live right next to us in Escondido Village.
All right.
And the guy finished the grad program and was going to go back to Brazil with his little family.
And she needed a job and she didn't want to leave.
And
she got to talk
and
to her
Maria
mom.
came next door and said, I don't want to go back to Brazil. Can I help you take
I
care of
notice you have a lot of going on here. You need to go to a meeting to set up an HMO? Well, why don't you let me babysit?
Yeah, can I help? And can you help me?
Wonderful.
So she just overstayed whatever visa she had.
Uh-huh.
And
So Portuguese was one of the first second languages I ever heard, probably. I mean, I guess it was probably a pretty polyglot little neighborhood in Escondido, but she was there a lot. I remember.
Yeah. Well, she lived with us
In her home,
yeah.
in student housing.
Yeah,
How many rooms are in this apartment?
2 or 3. No, there were
She
3.
didn't mind bunking either.
There were 3 bedrooms and little bedrooms, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're bedrooms, not
Yeah.
hang out and do work on your computer rooms. Those didn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
And then she applied for
what was her last name? Something.
Dos
Portuguese.
Santos, Maria dos Santos.
Dos Santos.
Two saints.
Huh. Okay. Mother and father.
Could be.
I'll look it up later.
Then she applied for either permanent resident status or a green card or something. And I flew down to Long Beach, California to testify on behalf of her application
Wow.
in my uniform.
Why in Long Beach?
That's where they process these
Naturalization.
applications.
Okay, I guess so. Okay. I guess Sacramento would be too far to process people from the border.
Well, it's federal. So
Sure, but
So-
proximity to the Mexican border, I suppose,
Yeah.
would have an advantage.
I would have rather driven to San Francisco than fly to Long Beach.
Yes, well,
But I did
I
and
can tell you
testified,
it's
but
not a
it
bad
wasn't.
drive.
Her application was turned down.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, but
Smile came
she
over
landed
his-
on her feet. So she was pretty smart.
Yeah.
So she realized or knew from the network that Canada was much more welcoming if you had a sponsor.
I see. Aha.
So through some kind of magic that I was
Mom.
not part of, she
Beachfriend
got linked up with
Letter campaign.
a married couple who were dentists and had at least one child that
Mm-hmm.
needed childcare in Edmonton, Alberta.
That's out there.
It's up there.
That's far from Brazil.
Yeah,
That's a lot farther north.
but
of
they
Rio.
but
yeah.
Canada was really welcoming to
Oh,
immigrants who would come and help
yeah.
their economy and their culture, and so she's lived in Canada ever since.
Huh.
I met with her once when I was in Edmonton.
Really?
The University of Alberta is there,
Sure.
and I accidentally got to be the go-to external member of dissertation committees at the University of Alberta
As one does.
because a couple of professors there got interested in the idea of research on teacher thinking.
Sure.
And I was
Who could
accidentally
blame them? Yeah.
the world's
The focus.
most interesting authority on that topic.
The
Had done the first study
essential-
of teacher thinking ever done
Invented.
as a
coined the
graduate
term,
student.
maybe. With help.
And it was at Michigan State where Lee Shulman was doing all
Shulman,
kinds of
Susan
things with this
Florio,
big,
and
yeah,
Bob,
yeah, Fred
the whole
Erickson.
gang. Erickson Hall. Yeah.
So I got invited up to Edmonton. The way the
Just by honor,
Canadians
yeah.
do it is they have the external examiner come to the defense after after reading
Okay.
the dissertation and so forth. They
That
pay for everything and
Makes a lot of sense.
take you out to dinner afterward.
Sure.
Oh, with the successful candidate.
Yes.
So while I was in Edmonton, I was able to contact Maria and do a proof of life
She got invited to the
pinch.
dinner. I have a consultant. She's my South American expertise. So we're doing a broad survey. We want to make sure all perspectives are considered and get a free meal.
What do Brazilian teachers think about?
Maria, what do you think of this?
You've been there.
Miss Dos Santos.
Yeah, Maria dos Santos.
That's wonderful. I'd love to meet her again. It's been
Wow.
50 years. And I still haven't made it to Edmonton, Alberta. I'm waiting for the invite. But sometimes, I guess,
There's
you just
an
have to get
amazing
the knack.
there's an amazing mall up there.
It's warm inside.
Yeah, it's not only
People
is it
huddled
warm
together.
in the winter. I mean, they
You
have
can drive cattle through there.
they have indoor ski slopes,
Oh my lord!
and they have
Oh, wait,
indoor.
it's not warm inside. Is that what you're saying?
Well, in that
A
section, it's
certain
not.
part. It's open to some.
So-
It's like a food court. You know? In Arizona, it's open,
Ski court.
and there's a gem shop. In Alberta, it's open, and there's a ski hill.
Ski slope. It's just a little one. It's a bunny slope,
Use what you got, you know.
and
Sure.
but there's also a tropical section that
Oh,
has
okay.
a wave pool and things like that. So
Alright.
it's not just a mall.
That
It's,
does sound like something you'd find in Phoenix
It's
or
a-
Scottsdale, more specifically.
it's like a Martian settlement. It's
You have to go through a decontamination
yeah,
chamber.
exactly. You hear a lot.
You have to sign in for how many days you're going to be on board
Exactly.
the Earthship Alberta
Mhm.
Mall.
So that was an interesting place to visit.
I bet.
But yeah, Maria was an important help
Yeah.
to all of us,
Right.
and we were to her apparently.
See, I told you he'd talk as long as I wasn't talking. That's pretty good, right?
Yes.
She's heard all my good ones. So let's 1976. Lee Shulman has handpicked you to come to Michigan State University.
Yeah.
And promptly left town. But that's the.
Well, he was on sabbatical at Stanford
Oh, interesting.
in 1974-75. Or
Okay.
maybe it was 75.
Yeah.
74-75.
Yeah. Doing what you're doing right now. Sabbatical.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. Well, he's only a couple of years older than me. He just
Right.
passed away here in Palo Alto 6 months ago.
Really?
Yeah. But so he was there on sabbatical, and of course he was interested in research on teaching, and we had a whole R&D center, research and development on teaching. It was called.
Yeah.
This was a leftover from the Great Society years, where there was a lot of federal money to form this network of
CCC.
R&D
Yeah.
centers
Oh, neat.
at universities and
Wow.
regional laboratories
Incredible.
in different regions of the
One of
country.
Bell
that-
Labs models.
yeah, the idea was the basic research would be done at the universities, at the R&D
That
centers,
was the deal. Yeah.
and then we would come up with these findings
Sure.
that would then be handed off to the R&D labs, to the regional labs, and their job was to turn these.
Commercialize it.
Well, yeah,
Sort of, or
to
operationalize it.
make,
Maybe.
yeah, operationalize it.
Yeah.
Say, this is the principle that we've discovered.
Right.
Now, how do you build that into teacher education curriculum
Right.
or in-service workshops or curriculum?
It's interesting how that
for school.
foreshadows and Silicon Valley erupting from this neighborhood. It's like all of that same activity coming out of Stanford. I mean, it happened in North Carolina and other places too, and Michigan State, obviously. And these land grant colleges had kind of a special relationship with the federal government too.
Yeah.
And
University of Illinois was big in reading. They had a big center there.
they could read pretty good down there.
You can read with a Midwestern accent.
That's one of my favorite teaching activities, actually. It's the one I remember fondest, so I don't blame them for picking that one.
Yeah. Anyway, where was this going?
You got the job at Michigan State.
Oh, yeah. Well, here was the thing. So Lee Shulman already had the idea, and maybe even had encouragement that it was going to be granted, that Michigan State would start a center for research on teacher thinking.
Sure.
And Michigan State had never had an education center like this before. So he was kind of poaching. He was, well, Stanford has this famous R&D center on research on teaching.
Right. Isn't that side note, isn't that where the Milgram prison experiments were? Or am I making that up? I love that detail, but if it's not true, put it on the record.
You're confusing Milgram with another guy who just died, Italian name, who was a professor of psychology at Stanford.
Okay.
Milgram did the electric shock experiment.
Okay.
At Yale. But what's his name? I'll tell you his name in a minute.
We'll Google it.
He just retired and died fairly recently. He did the prison experiment here before I got here.
Okay.
But anyway, that was a side note.
Sorry.
So,
moving on.
So what Shulman noticed was that Nate Gage's project, which was called the Program on Teaching Effectiveness, had a program coordinator who was me.
Okay.
Who was a
project manager,
former naval officer.
Organized.
And apparently I was billed as doing an amazingly excellent job. And so what Shulman decided was that, well, we're going to need a program coordinator when we get this center up and running at Michigan State. And since maybe Shulman even triggered this, we were designing a study to do while Nate Gage was on sabbatical back east, and Bruce Joyce had been hired to take his place. And Lee Shulman suggested to me and to Bruce Joyce, you guys have a chance to design this study that you're designing while Nate Gage is out of town, to include what might be the first study of research on teacher thinking ever done. If you just kind of take a look at some, he didn't lay it on heavily, he just said, you have a chance